I want to start by saying Happy New Year to everybody. And this is our first show of the year, so I want to thank you all for tuning into the show. And today we're going to be discussing a very controversial topic. And the topic is the COVID-19 vaccine. This has been, it's been a concern for everyone, and COVID has impacted all our lives in one way or the other. To the individuals that lost somebody during this coronavirus, we mourn with you. To those who lost their jobs, we pray for you. And to those that felt lonely during this season, just so that you know you're not alone. And everyone had gone through something in one way or the other. The point is, after months of uncertainty, in the past month, there seemed to be some light at the end of the tunnel with the discovery of the corona vaccine. This gave people a sense of hope, and while others felt skeptical about the expedited discovery of a vaccine. So I know a lot of people have fears, and they're on the fence on whether or not they should get the vaccine or not. And this might be due to some type of misinformation or none thereof. The goal of today's show is to just provide you all with information regarding this vaccine. We're not here to tell you get the vaccine or don't get the vaccine. We just want to educate you about what the vaccine entails. And here to discuss that with me is none other than Dr. Sara Alosaimy, who is an infectious disease pharmacist. And Sarah, I will just go ahead and have you have the floor. Thank you so much for being here. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone in Ariola. Thank you for having me. I'm surprised. I have quite a friends and followers joining.
Yeah.
I didn't want to forget a couple, but thank you to my friends, especially. Hey, Roman.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Just a brief bio, I guess, for those who don't know me without boring anyone. Me and Ariola actually went to pharmacy school together at University of Illinois at Chicago. That's how I know Ariola. And I graduated in 2016. Then I did my PGY1 residency in pharmacy practice at Brigham and Women's Hospital. It was a great opportunity. It was a big hospital. It was affiliated with Harvard Medical School. I was given the opportunity to stay in for a second year, so I did my specialty training in infectious diseases as a PGY2. So there I learned more about microbiology. I learned more about vaccines. During that entire time, I was always a certified immunization specialist. So as pharmacists, we give vaccines all the time. So that's something that I was somewhat comfortable with. After that, I decided that I'm more interested into microbiology and epidemiology and how they intersect together. So I decided to do a fellowship in that. So my fellowship is very focused on health outcomes, which is basically public health, but as it relates to infectious diseases. And what's a better time to be in that field than right now, or what's a more problematic time, if you might say. I'm also, or I used to be, a master's of public health student. I'm actually graduating this month when I finish my practicum hour, so I'm also an MPH. That's it. I'm a board certified pharmacotherapy specialist, so I hope that the answers that I will provide is going to be as beneficial as possible. And if anyone had any questions, please ask us on the line. I think it's very important to say as those questions come and line up or rise up, is that it's very important to know that science is changing every day. You guys might have noticed during the beginning of the pandemic that the CDC had maybe different recommendation than what we're recommending right now or what we're thinking right now. And that's not because those recommendations contradict per se, but they change based on the information that happened. So whatever information I might provide today is only timely to the time being. So if something else comes up tomorrow per the CDC or the WHO or whatever your organization or your country is, it's very important that you keep following up and keep updating yourself with the literature and just treat those scientific information not as political, rapidly changing platforms, but more of science that is adaptable with the introduction of new facts. So we're only as good as the data that we have for now. And that's just something very important I wanted to kind of introduce in the beginning, because we're scientists and we try to be as truthful as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. As you guys see, Sarah just mentioned all these things that she's done. A lot of us stopped after pharmacy school, but she went on and just continued to get more degrees and so much more. And I just want her to know that she is an inspiration, just doing all the things.
Thank you,
We really do love that. And like she mentioned already, we encourage you guys to participate. Go ahead and ask your questions, put your questions in the question box below, and we will answer them during the show and after the show. All right, so thank you guys so much. So Sarah, we're gonna start, and I'm just gonna start with this. As an infectious disease pharmacist and a frontline worker, please share with us your experience so far with COVID.
Sure. So you guys just heard about my credentials. During the beginning of the pandemic, my role or my position was primarily focused on being an infectious diseases epidemiology outcomes fellow. So a lot of my work has been done with patient data as it relates to data analysis. So when the pandemic first started, we had to move from college and moving back at home. When we started having students, and this was my role to take the students to the hospital and rotate with them, we kind of had to revisit that in order to better contain the virus and in order to better contain the spread of the virus. So we did most of our activities remotely. The projects that I was working on that are related to COVID are mostly twofold. One of them was related to a retrospective observational study of how those different COVID-related treatments are impacting patients at the state of Michigan in general, which we later expanded to a multi-center analysis in the entire country. Now, it would be interesting to see how different our studies on what we kind of observed would be different than controlled trials. This is kind of a bigger question because, as you know, in clinical trials, usually your patients are very controlled, they have a certain criteria, but then when you go to COVID in the hospital, everyone's just all over the place. They're not restricting on pregnant women, they're not restricting on transplant patients, they're not restricting with AIDS. So we think that our study or our focus is going to be pretty cool. My role by any means was not probably as challenging as a lot of my coworkers who are the frontline workers. And I just want to take a moment for us to appreciate that when we say frontline workers, we don't just say the doctors and the nurses that are taking care of you. There's so many frontline workers during the pandemic that we should learn to appreciate, and we should definitely just take a moment to think about the efforts that they have been doing for the past, almost year now.
Yes.
So it's very important to do that. A lot of the infectious diseases pharmacists, because you asked about that specifically, they were implemented, they have been involved in implementing the guidelines as it relates to the rapid changes in the medications of the coronavirus. For example, Dr. Anthony Fauci have nominated Dr. Susan Davis, who's an infectious disease specialist, and she was actually a past fellow in the same position that I am years ago. Now she's like the guru of infectious diseases. So she's sitting in the NIH committee. The really frontline pharmacists, per se, I would say they're critical care pharmacists and the emergency department pharmacists, because they've seen it all and they had to deal with the patients and just change rapidly to really the challenges of the environment as it comes in COVID. As you guys, I'm sure no one have forgot the challenges that we got with PPE, the challenges that we got with resource allocation, with drug shortages, just because of the overflow of the hospital. So those are the pharmacists that are really the front line in general. I think we should always remember the efforts that they had to adapt to during the pandemic.
Yes, thank you. Like you said, it's not just the nurses, the doctors. We have the governors and all these people working as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And also the community pharmacist at Adiola, because I know you still practice a lot in that area, when they had to rise up to the occasion when they started implementing COVID testing, and community pharmacists were like, well, we're about to test for COVID right now.
Yes.
And really everyone just rise up to the occasion. Sure, we were certified in vaccination, why not testing in COVID? And right now my suspicion, and I'm not by any means like a CDC representative or anything, but my suspicion is that we're going to reach a point where probably you're going to walk into community pharmacy, probably months from now, not anytime soon, and ask for your COVID shot, and then your pharmacist is going to give it to you. That's what I think is going to happen. That's the direction that we're going to.
Yes, absolutely. Guys, I see some of you are putting the questions in the comment section. If you want to put it, if you look down below, you would see a question box. Go ahead and type your question over there. That way we can attend to it later on. Okay? So, Sarah, thank you for giving us a brief overview of that. So do you mind telling us what exactly is the COVID vaccine and how does it differ from other vaccines that are currently available?
Sure. So it's very important when we start talking about what is vaccination and what is the vaccine is to also understand what is the immune system, right? So the vaccine, whether it was the Pfizer and the Moderna, and I know people are starting to hear about the J&J one, the Johnson & Johnson, basically all vaccines have similar approach where they use small genetic coding to cause an immune response in your body. That immune response is something that you need in order to fight the coronavirus infection if it in case gets introduced to your body. The technology that the COVID vaccine is using is called mRNA technology, and I know you have another question about that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time going in details about this. But the COVID-19 vaccine should help your body develop immunity to the virus that caused COVID-19 without having you experience the disorder as in general. Different type of vaccines will work in different ways, but they all carry the same concept. When they trigger your immune response, they trigger it using two fancy cells called the T lymphocytes and the B lymphocyte, and those sites just tend to remember how to fight the specific virus if it can identify it in the future. It typically does take a few weeks for your body to kind of prepare that army of those B sites and T sites in case the COVID-19 virus comes over. And this is why a lot of people remember, and I'm sure they know, that when you take the vaccine, your response is not immediate. You don't take the shot and then you walk out of the door and then you're protected from corona. That's not how your body works. It still needs a couple of weeks for the immune system to kind of get adapted. So that's something very important. And I know I had a friend right here, and she might be joining actually, who received the vaccine, but then ended up getting COVID the day after. And people say, how is that possible? I'm saying that is very possible because your body still didn't get a chance to develop those B lymphocyte and T lymphocyte. You need to give that army a second to remember the directions of the virus. So it is possible. Sometimes after vaccination, that process of building immunity and preparing the T lymphocyte and B lymphocyte can take time and can cause you to experience certain symptoms. And that's okay. That's normal. That's your body generating the antibodies to get it ready. And if anything, that is a site that your body is starting to identify and understand the instructions to fight the virus in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I think you mentioned that it's an mRNA vaccine, right? Some people are concerned that because it's an mRNA vaccine that it might mess with their genetic code.
Yes.
Right? What do you have to say about that?
No, that is a great question. I know a lot of the people who are very concerned about the mRNA vaccine, or basically a lot of people who think it's a chip or something, or because it's new, or why are we creating this technology just for this virus right now? mRNA is a very simple way to say messenger RNA. And RNA is basically just a way to explain or talk about the genetic material of the virus. So messenger RNA. And if we think about it this way, it becomes a lot more simple. They're one of the first initial COVID-19 vaccine authorized in the United States. Like all vaccines, the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine have been tested for safety before even authorized. That's something that we're going to talk about later. While the technology is new, it's not unknown. We have been studying it for a decade. If you go to PubMed, for example, which is a platform that a lot of healthcare providers use to search for literature, you're going to find information about this way before we even knew that COVID is going to be coming. And it's very important to know that the mRNA vaccine technology does not contain the actual virus. Now, that does not mean that it's bad if a vaccine contains the actual live virus. I can give you numerous examples of vaccines that probably half of America have already received that contains the live virus, and that's not really a bad thing. But the mRNA technology is different because it does not have the live virus. The way it simply works is that it has material from the virus that causes COVID-19, and this material provides, think about it as a pamphlet or a list of instructions. And this list of instructions, when it gets introduced to your body, your immune system is going to understand exactly what is the invader that's going to come in the future, which is COVID-19. And therefore, it can make copies of the protein so it can destroy the COVID-19 virus if it comes over. And this is the very simple way of putting it. Just imagine it as a list of genetic material that is like a pamphlet that gives your body instruction to destroy the virus if it comes over. It is not a segment of COVID that's injected to you. It's not a live one. It's not what we call an attenuated vaccine, so like a mock of the COVID that's very close to it. Those are all great technologies for vaccine creation, and I'm not by any means recommending it or saying this is better than the other. But the biggest advantage that the mRNA technology was able to provide us is how fast it is in creating and understanding what is that variant and how does it look like. And we should, I think, start to appreciate it because it's going to play a huge role in case the variants of the same strain changes or develops year after year. As I'm sure a lot of your followers know, the flu strain changes every year, and this is why we get a different flu shot every year. This is why a lot of the vaccines, they're getting revisited every couple of years to make sure that the strains didn't change. Like any creature, viruses change and adapt to the earth and adapt to the environments. That's something we learned since we were 6 years old, right? That all creatures adapt and change. And that's why we should be able to trust the technology that was built in and not be skeptical just because it's new. It's about time we have new technology. That's at least what I believe in and what we know based on the information we have right now.
So I love the fact that you said that. I saw a comment when you were talking. Someone said, so it's not a chip, you know?
Exactly. So it's not a chip because it's basically, if there is an element that the vaccine has, then it is strands of genetic material called the messenger RNA inside a special coating that is instructs based on the COVID-19 vaccine based on the virus. So it's not the actual virus, it's not something similar to the virus, and it's definitely not a chip. It's the genetic segments of the genetic material of the virus.
So this is off topic. I had a pharmacist at my job who doesn't really like get vaccine and stuff, but he went ahead and got the COVID vaccine. And one of the reasons why he got that is because they're not introducing an actual, like compared to the flu vaccine, where you're actually injecting a strand of the flu into you or whatever. So that's why he went ahead and got that. So he's like, I like this technology, and that's why he went ahead and got that.
Exactly. No, it's absolutely, because it doesn't have what we call, quote unquote, an infectious element, because it is not an infectious element. It's not the virus getting injected to you. The another advantage, like we said, the shorter manufacturing time. And I know that's another question that you're going to ask, why or how was it developed so fast? And then the potential for targeting multiple diseases or multiple strains. So awesome. If the strain changes just a little bit, we can basically go back to the same machine and fix it based off there. This means the process can be standardized, it can be scaled up, it can make the vaccine manufacturer faster, and it can really be very fast as weeks if we got a new strain. So that's awesome.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. So tell us, how many shots of the vaccine would be needed to acquire immunity, and how long does immunity last for?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm sure a lot of the audience have kind of started noticing the news that are coming up with all the healthcare providers taking shot 1 and shot 2. As of now, the 2 vaccines that we have in the States that people are using are the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine. And both of them have 2 doses or 2 shots. And yes, you need to get 2 doses and 2 shots in order to get the full immunity that is expected from the vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine is separated by 21 days. The Moderna vaccine is separated by a month or 4 weeks. There is news of the J&J vaccine that's going to be coming up, not yet, so I don't want to speak about it until I see the full data, but the new vaccine or the upcoming one is going to have 1 dose only. So it will be very exciting. I think it will be easier for the community. I was talking to a lot of friends that are kind of finding the challenges in that as it comes to insurance claiming, as it comes to finding the patients to get back. I mean, Viola, you work in community pharmacy, and you know how is it like when you give someone a shot and then they don't come for their booster, and then what are we going to do when it's a mess.
Yeah.
So basically it is 2 shots, like we said. The storage is a little bit challenging, but that's not something I want the general public to worry about. Have your hospitals worry about storage and the challenges related to storage. We created webinars related to that. As for your question, which is the important one, how long does it provide immunity? The honest answer I'm going to give you today is I don't know, or we don't know yet. The protection that was provided from the trial have been effective for, and the first person who started like that COVID-19, if we're going to think who's the first person ever who got any type of COVID-19, it was a couple of months ago. So I would say that person is protected at least until 8 months right now, give or take. If you want to compare the immunity that you get from vaccination to the innate immunity that you get from acquiring the virus naturally, and I know that's another question that you had, typically what we say, innate immunity from COVID-19 might last you for a good 3 to 4 months, probably as long as 6 to 8 months. This is what we say about natural innate immunity. And again, that's very different to differentiate between the vaccine and how the vaccine provides. However, for the vaccine, we know that based on the current trials, that person is probably protected up until 8 months, but we're not sure yet. Are we going to reach a point where the COVID-19 vaccine is required every year like the flu shot? Honestly, I don't know, but I'm not totally canceling the idea, but I don't want to scare anyone off. But if the strains continue to change, if the immunity is not protected indefinitely, and a lot of vaccines don't protect indefinitely, a lot of people, I don't need to recite other vaccination schedules, but as you can know, there's a lot of schedules and a lot of boosters at other times. So until we learn more about the vaccination and the natural immunity versus the vaccine-induced immunity and how those two align and intersect, we can't know for sure when's your next dose going to be, or if you even need the next dose if you got vaccinated at least once.
Thank you. Thank you. Love that. Miriam, I like your question, but go ahead and put that in the question box. We would attend to that. That's a good question. So Sarah, most people are concerned about the safety and efficacy of the COVID vaccine. What were some steps that were put in place during the development of the vaccine to ensure that this vaccine would be very safe for individuals receiving it?
Awesome question, Adiola, and that's, I think, the question that I want to spend the most amount of time in. You ask about what is the safety and the efficacy, and then what are the steps that we're taking in placement and development of the vaccine. So let's talk about what we know for now about the efficacy and the safety of the vaccine. Let's start about the good stuff. Let's start about efficacy. So when they tested for efficacy for the vaccine, what they were simply looking for is the patient or the candidate who received the COVID-19 vaccine as a disease. So this is what they were looking for. They were not looking for, is the patient carrier of the COVID-19? They weren't looking, is the patient going to transmit COVID-19 without developing it? When they defined effectiveness, they were looking for, are you going to get COVID or are you not going to COVID as a disease? So it's very important when we hear those numbers on the news about 95% effectiveness, 90% effectiveness, that we know what these numbers mean. Now, the vaccines is pretty effective. You've seen the numbers. One is 90%, one is 95%. Honestly, with biggest trials, when I see those numbers, I think of them as comparable. So I wouldn't necessarily say this is better than the others just because we still have initial numbers. My assumption, again, as a public health expert, as an infectious disease expert, once we blow up the numbers, those 90 and 95% are going to end up being pretty similar. So I wouldn't dwell on which vaccine is better than the other for now. This is my assumption. Now let's talk about safety, because this is extremely important. It's very important to understand what does safety even mean. No vaccine, no medication that you're taking, no environment, no food that you take, no medical treatment, no surgery that you provide is completely free from side effects. And me and Ariola were talking about the other day, like even life situation. There's nothing that does not have a little bit of risk. So it is our responsibility really as medical professionals or as someone that you're interviewing and talking to today is just to be honest about everything that was reported. And it's all public knowledge, by the way. It's not hidden at all. I encourage everyone to keep logging to the CDC and the WHO and keep updating themselves about the reports and the data that's provided there. So for safety, on your arm, you're likely to get a pain and swelling in the site of injection. And that's fairly common. And when we say fairly common, we mean that at least 25 to 30% of people are going to get it. Throughout the rest of the day, you might get fever, you might get chills, you might feel tired, you might feel headache, and that is totally okay because I described the immune response and how that's developed. So those kind of reactions are okay. If anything, it means that your body's trying to pick up on the mRNA of the virus and understand it. It's very important to know that you might not have anything. You might not experience anything. Mm-hmm. I know people right now, because a lot of my friends are frontline workers and received the vaccine. I know people who have experienced it from the first dose. I know some who only experienced after the first dose of the second dose. I know people who experienced it from both, and I know people who didn't experience it at all. So you can fit into any scenario. You never know. And I think it's very helpful, and I highly encourage everyone who end up receiving the vaccine to share your experience, because so far we've given it, like I said, in controlled environment. I want to hear what everyone had to say. How was everyone's experience? The one thing that people need to be mindful of is if those symptoms, especially the fever and the chills, last for more than 24 hours, then you should go back to the hospital and contact your medical providers. One thing I missed saying is that after each dose of vaccination, similar to most vaccines, you're going to be monitored for at least 15 minutes, preferably 30 minutes. And the reason we do that is just to make sure that you don't get an anaphylactic shock or an anaphylactic reaction, which is extremely rare. And when we say extremely rare, I want to say, and this is a proportion in general for all vaccines, so don't quote me on it specifically for the COVID, it's closer to 0.01%. So it's highly unlikely. I've given patients maybe thousands of vaccines in my entire life. I've never seen this happen, not even once. So, but this is why you're required to be observed for a little bit.
Thank you.
So now we kind of talked about the safety aspect of it. A lot of people are concerned that large numbers of people are getting seriously ill from the vaccine. This is not necessarily true, because when someone gets seriously ill from the vaccine, those are required to be reported to the state. And by the way, even as patients, you can and you have the right to go online, Google VAERS, and that's at least in the state, and you can go and report the vaccine-related reaction that you experienced, whether it was COVID or something else. So this is all public knowledge. It's not a big secret. It's not something that Big Pharma is keeping. Those can be public records, and your number is going to be submitted to the government once that happens. You did ask, which is a second component of your question, about what are the steps that was placed in the process and why the vaccine was developed. And this is, I think, what's driving people crazy is how was it developed so fast? That does not make any sense and all of that. And I really understand the concerns that people are coming from, because let me explain something to you, Adiola. A lot of the vaccines that we have so far have not been developed in that brief of a time. You know, the average time it takes to develop a vaccine is anywhere between 5 to 10 years. So when someone sees that COVID started in March and we got a vaccine in December, I understand when people start eye rolling and don't believe it. But I think it occurred because of three main reasons, and I just want to make sure everyone understands it. The first issue, or the first solution that kind of expedited the process, is funding. Public, private cash, pharma, government, investors. Just think about your friends. I have so many friends who have invested in pharmaceutical companies, and they were not even investors before. A lot of funding and a lot of money was dumped into creating and finding this vaccine as soon as possible. It was the only solution for countries to function back together, for the economy to rise again. So people need to understand, when you have funding for science, science becomes successful. And take it for someone who has wrote so many grants, and take it for someone who had to write so many letters to different organizations just to ask for a little bit of money to finish a scientific research. The second consideration for the vaccine to be developed so fast is the immediate and rapid patient enrollment. And I told you in the introduction, I work in infectious diseases research. What's something that's different in infections as opposed to diabetes, for example? Infections are rare, right? How many times have you got an infection in your entire life? Like maybe I got a strep throat 2 years ago, you know what I mean? But diabetes everywhere, like everyone has diabetes. So can you imagine how much I used to struggle when I wanted to recruit a patient for an infectious disease research before? I used to struggle so bad, Adiola. I'm trying to find one patient a week in the entire country. Right now, we're in a pandemic. People just Google what pandemic means. It means everyone is getting sick at the same time. So patient enrollment, instead of taking months, like the best, easiest diabetes clinical trials would finish their recruitment in 8 months. This is like super fast. You know, when it comes to COVID vaccine, how much time it took to enroll everyone and to enroll 6,000 patients in the first trial? Overnight. It was done. Overnight. People just want the vaccine. People want to receive it. People want to get it. People want to get better. And patients are enrolling so fast. You want to pay them? You can pay them. You want to have them enroll by voluntarily? I know so many people who volunteered for it. I personally signed up to volunteer for it, but I wasn't selected. So that is the second reason. The third reason I kind of allude to in the beginning is the science and the technology, the mRNA technology that I'm glad that you designated a full question about. So that technology, again, have been developed in 2 decades, not something new, not something that we just pulled back from the desk. It's impossible to pull up from the desk right away. And this is the reason why the COVID-19 vaccine have been, and again, not rushed, but prioritized.
Yes.
And when it was prioritized, giving the funding, giving the mRNA technology, giving the rapid patient enrollment, we were able to give 6,000 patients overnight to have them sign up and then get the results immediately after a couple of months. This is insane. So that's just something I want people to understand. There's a lot of phases related to the COVID-19 development, and I don't want to bore anyone with it, but please know that none of those stages have been skipped. We're obligated to follow all of them, and if you just Google, you can find most of the data on the on the CDC website, on the company's website. They're obligated to submit them to the FDA, and the biggest thing, they're obligated to monitor them now and for years to come, not just months to come.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really love that. Just the fact that you were able to clarify to people that this was not rushed. It was just prioritized.
Yes.
And that's, I think a lot of people think, with all the misinformation out there, a lot of people think it was rushed. But they don't know that they've been actually following similar viruses to this for years. And it just, you know, they just had the funding. So thank you so much for covering that. Someone asked a quick question. They just wanted to know, what are the side effects? I believe that you mentioned it, but if you just want to give them like just a brief overview of the side effects, just mention it.
Absolutely, yeah. Just real quick, the most common side effect is that you're going to get pain and swelling at the site of injection. And the second thing that are more, not rare, but less common, but they might happen, is fever, chills, headache. So basically, it's like you're getting sick, you're getting the flu, and that just means your immune system is getting triggered. All of these side effects should not last more than 24 hours. If they do, then contact your doctor. And let me tell you, I know a couple of healthy individuals, and they're 20 years old, doctors and nurses, who experience the fever, chills, and headaches. So just like lay low, stay home, see how long it takes, self-medicate yourself, and then if it lasts more than 24 hours, go. I literally know a friend who had his fever last for 22 hours, and he's a cardiology doctor in Arizona. He's like, oh, okay, 23 hours, I'm good. I'm just going to go to bed.
Right.
So just be patient with yourself and keep monitoring your symptoms.
Yes. For me, the most I had was basically pain at the site of injection. That was, I had it for about 24 hours. So let's continue. So for people who got COVID already, should they get the vaccine?
That is a great question, Adiola. And let me tell you, from personal experience, I have got COVID. I was fortunate not to have a terrible experience when I got it a couple of weeks ago. A lot of people ask, why do we get the vaccine? And a lot of people ask, should we continue to mask and social distance? But I know you're probably going to ask about that a little bit later. Yes, you should get the vaccine. And let me tell you why. I kind of explained the difference between the natural immunity and the innate immunity and the vaccine-induced immunity. And while we know, and we kind of have data about the natural immunity that you have from the virus, which is represented because think about it, the virus happened first and then the vaccine happened. So we have probably more information about the natural immunity from the virus and then about vaccine-related immunity. And data says, like I said, that it's at least until 3 months, but there's plenty of data to support that natural immunity is 6 to 8 months. Now, why should you get the vaccine? Because when that period of time expired, you're going to need that protection. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, just because you have natural immunity or vaccine-related immunity does not mean that you cannot be a carrier and transmit that to other people who did not get COVID-19. And that kind of answers your future question about the masking and the social distancing. Mm-hmm. So at times, we don't know how long you're protected. The data keeps changing every day. The last paper, like I said, that I read said 6 months, and that's in an intersegment of people who are mostly healthcare providers. It's very important to also remember that the virus changes and the strain changes. Mm-hmm. So as far as we are right now, we know that your natural immunity is protecting you from the exact strain that you got. And I'm pretty confident that little changes in strain should not change a lot as it comes to the natural and the vaccine-induced immunity. But if it does, you're going to need that vaccine to protect you. One thing I know, and I know you have a question about that, is related to the criteria. It is possible that people who got COVID already are not going to be prioritized on top of the vaccine list to receive the vaccine because of their natural immunity, but that's not permanent, and that does not mean you're not qualified for it. It just means that you're not going to be at the highest priority right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I did a survey on my page earlier on, and I asked people on whether or not they will receive the vaccine or not. 46% said yes, while 54% said no. And one of the most common reasons they said no is because they feel as though they don't trust it yet, while others feel like it might have a side effect on them in the long run. Please tell me, Sarah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, so I think at Iola, we kind of started explaining like how the vaccine was prioritized and not rushed, and we explained the different phases. And it's only fair to say, as scientists, as public health experts, as all the people who are working in this field, to know that there's no such thing without risks or side effects. And it's the fact, it's the reality that right now we're in January, right? So the first person who got the vaccine actually just entered their 9th month. I thought it was 8 months. It's actually just starting their 9th month. So we know the long-term side effects up until 9 months, but we don't know if it causes something longer term or no. Only time, only tracking, only accurate reporting is going to start noticing that. But this is why we encourage everyone to report it and to track it. The good news is that health officials are already watching it. And so if something is to happen, the person who had it 8 months ago should have known right now. The other good news is that this mRNA technology and the viral strains that we've created or used to create the COVID-19 vaccine is not new. It's something that we've used fairly commonly before. And while I understand the hesitation from the general public and maybe even some scientists that they can't fairly assume that this COVID vaccine is as safe as the vaccines that are closely resembling it in terms of a technology perspective, I think I can confidently say it should be. And those side effects of anything are rare. The most important thing I want to tell all your followers and your listeners is to look at the big picture. If you're going to pick a battle or pick your risk, I would pick risking the long-term side effects of the vaccine than the long-term side effects of coronavirus. Think about coronavirus. It's a foreign object that's coming to your body. It is actively impacting and changing and degenerating your cells, and no one knows anything about the long-term side effects of that. We have people, and we're already seeing it, by the way. There are effects about long-term impact on your neurological system. There are reports about long-term effect on your lungs, specifically if you have risk factors. There are reports about long-term side effect on mentally and psychologically, just because of the experiences. So if you genuinely believe that the vaccine will have some sort of long-term side effect and you're not willing to accept the reassuring reports or initial reports from scientists, I really humbly ask you to pick between that and the long-term side effects of COVID-19 and choose which battle do you want to go over. And the third most important thing is that we need to have some sort of social responsibility. I heard a lot of people who are like, well, I'm not going to take it, but I want everyone else to take it. Well, that's not fair. That's not how innate immunity works. You can't just have everyone go risking taking the COVID-19 vaccine because you're afraid of the risk factors, but you're also afraid of COVID. So you want them to eliminate it on your behalf. So I just want everyone to have a little better social responsibility about who should be receiving the vaccine or accepting the diseases itself.
Thank you, Sarah. I think one of the things that aided me in making my decision, and I feel like a lot of people don't know about this, is the long-term side effects of coronavirus. Most people think, oh, I'm young, I can survive it, I'm gonna be fine. But there are people who are young, healthy, they had the virus and they never returned back to normal. They're still, and no one knows how to help them. Even the doctors don't know how to help them. So that's,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people need to be aware. It's just like you said, weighing your pros and your cons. So it's up to you. I wanted to ask you, in the United States here, Sarah, who are the people most likely to get the vaccine first and why?
Well, that is the question that unfortunately I'm going to answer with we don't know yet. A lot of reports, and I know you have an audience from out of the States as well. So I recommend everyone to follow up with your governor, with your state or city's regulation. The information is very rapid, and because it's related to supply and demand, right? The faster they can manufacture the vaccines, the faster they can supply it, the more likely that you're going to get it faster. I'm literally following up with the governor's regulations every day. We're getting emails. I work for Wayne State University. We just got an email on Friday about the criteria of who should get it and who should not. And I'm probably not going to be getting it, like I said earlier, until I have to round with students in about a couple of months. And if I don't, I might not get the vaccine anytime soon. So in general, from a science perspective, if I would prioritize who gets the vaccine first and who doesn't, we're going to start with people at risk, right, of acquiring COVID. And that is your frontline workers. So policemen, people on the front line, the doctors, the nurses, anyone who's really touching patients and talking to patients and just dealing with COVID on a daily basis. Those are definitely going to prioritize, I'm assuming, everywhere, not just in the state. The second line of people are going to be those with baseline risk factors. So you're thinking elderly, patients at nursing home, patients who have experienced lung disorders, specifically COPD, just because we know that they have a worse experience to the disease. But what I tell everyone is, young or not, just keep following up with your own state regulations and officials. And if you get a chance to get it, then definitely get it. And I kind of alluded this earlier. I'm assuming, my hunch is that people who have got COVID-19 already are not going to be prioritized. You should get it if you can get it. I highly encourage you. You can still transmit the disease even if you got it, but you're probably not going to be as prioritized as someone who did not get COVID at baseline. And I'm already seeing this in some states' regulations. I have certain friends in Michigan and Illinois in specific hospitals, and they actually have acquiring COVID-19 within the past 3 to 4 months as an exclusion. So just keep following up with those regulations and definitely take the opportunity when you can.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. You've been doing so amazing so far. And I just want to go into the last question for you before we go into taking these Q&As, right? So as an infectious disease expert, I wanted to ask you, please tell us, what would your recommendation be? Would you advise people in regards to people getting the vaccine or not getting the vaccine?
I absolutely and undoubtedly recommend everyone get the vaccine. Even if you're skeptical about vaccines, this is the time to change your mind. If you would get one vaccine in your life, get the COVID life, just to reassure people and to tell them that the COVID-19 vaccine was prioritized. It was not rushed. You can be as worried as you can about long-term side effects. I cannot prove it to you that it will not have, just because no one followed it right now, and we don't have a time machine to go in the future and see what's going to happen. But I can assure you that COVID does have long-term side effects as well. The vaccine was expedited, like I said, but was not rushed. I do want to go back to a very important point as well about the masking and the social distancing, Adiola, and I think we kind of missed the mark or missed the opportunity to talk about this earlier. And this is really one of my final recommendations to everyone, is just to try and do the best as you can. I know I'm like young and I'm very social and I love going out, and I still struggle with this every single day. And I already got COVID, so sometimes I experience my own moment where I think I'm invincible or something, or like, okay, well, I can't get sick, or I'm less likely to get sick right now, but I can still be a carrier and give it to someone else. And I just want everyone to be very mindful of social distancing and masking. And that is a question that you had, is I saw a lot of jokes, a lot of memes like on Instagram that are like, okay, so now we have to take the COVID vaccine, but we still have to mask. Like, explain this to me. And I'm like, okay, let me explain this to you. The vaccine and was studied in order to prevent COVID-19 as a disease. It was not studied to prevent COVID-19 for you as a carrier. Are you less likely or maybe unlikely to give it to someone else? Maybe, but I cannot never tell you that because I don't have the data. And the easiest thing you do is just to be very mindful about the people that you're socializing with. Be very mindful about where you're wearing a mask and what's not. Just don't think of yourself as invincible just because you got the vaccine and you got the disorder, because we don't know that yet. I'm hoping that's the case, but we don't know that yet. We don't really think so yet, because you can still carry it and give it to someone else who did not experience COVID before. And that's really kind of the take-home message that I really want to clarify for a lot of people, because I think it's really misunderstood and it's been joked about in the internet a lot and kind of dumped into the conspiracy theories section of why we still have to wear a mask.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much. So now we're now going to go into taking these questions. I think you guys, Sarah was amazing, wasn't she? Go ahead. Let her know how amazing she was. Thanks so much. Someone said, so after getting vaccinated, we still have to mask up? Absolutely.
Yes, and I hope I explained it well about why we need to mask up. It's basically because the trials have been made in order to see and monitor if you would get the disorder or COVID-19 as an infection, but we don't know if you're going to carry the virus and be asymptomatic and then give it to another friend who never experienced it. So you're not likely, if you get vaccinated and you already got COVID, to get it again. This is extremely unlikely, if not impossible, for at least the past 8 months that we're saying. But giving it to someone else, unfortunately, we cannot tell you that that's not going to happen for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sarah, do you see the comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you, guys. It's so sweet seeing a lot of old and new friends.
Yeah, awesome. Let me go ahead and put some of these questions up, and we can just go ahead and take a look at it. Someone said, is the vaccine free according to WHO?
The vaccine is free in some countries, actually. I'm not from America originally. I'm from Saudi Arabia. So the vaccine is free in Saudi Arabia, and I know in a lot of Arabic countries. Unfortunately, a lot of the governments, and if someone is going to think that the COVID was politicalized, maybe that's your platform to think so. Every single drug, not just the COVID-19, by the way, every single drug, every cardiology, oncology drug is regulated and discussed, or the contracts are discussed between the government and the pharmaceutical companies. And this is not just the United States, by the way. Everyone set their own numbers, their own rules. So the reason why it's not free, or that, at least for now, in the States, or we have to go through a lot of regulation, is because of that. And that's not a secret or a conspiracy theory. We all know this news. It is free in some countries, but I would highly recommend you just to follow up with your personal location, follow your governor, follow your job description. I'm assuming it's going to be very encouraged to the point where it's going to be free. That's my assumption, at least the first dose, similar to the flu vaccine. But let's just wait and see.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me go ahead and pull up the next questions. Someone said some people are symptomatic while some are asymptomatic. Is it the same level of sickness in both?
That's a great question. So the reports that we're seeing, if you've never got COVID before and you developed symptoms, and maybe your friend got COVID as well and did not develop symptoms, the person who did not have symptoms are less likely to make other people sick. And this is just because of common reasons. Think about it. The person who's asymptomatic, who's not coughing, who's not sneezing, who's not sweating, who doesn't keep touching you, is less likely to give you the virus and transmit it from your body to yours. So it's not rocket science. But people who are symptomatic, who are sneezing in your face, who are touching you, who are sweating, are likely to give it to you. Are they both as sick? Of course not. The symptomatic one is the one who's going to get to the hospital. Are they both equally contagious? Not really. The one who has symptoms is at least a little bit more likely to be contagious to other people. Do they both have COVID? They both have COVID. Can they both give COVID to other people? Absolutely. Asymptomatic or not, you can still give it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and take on the next question. Someone said, should we vaccinate our kids?
I highly recommend that you do. I get a lot of this question also from pregnant women because, as you know, at least as far as I know from my readings, all the trials have not been done in children or pregnant women. But it goes back to the general conclusion. Do you want to risk the long-term side effect of your child getting COVID? Or do you want to risk the long-term side effect of the vaccine that we're still not seeing any of? And we know, and it's a similar virus technology to other vaccines that were also administered to your child. I personally know so many pregnant women who have received that COVID-19 vaccine and were at the front line to get it. And one of them actually said an amazing post in Covet on Facebook. She was getting it when she was pregnant. She's like, I acknowledge the risk. I know it was not studied, but I trust this, and I would rather take my chances with the not unreported, unlikely to happen ever COVID-19 vaccine long-term side effect than the risk of me being in the hospital as a pregnant woman with COVID. So this is what I tell people. So it was not studied in clinical trials, but right now, yes, your kids can get it. And if you can give it to your kids, I would do that. If I was pregnant or if I had a child, we would be on the front line to get it too.
Yes. So I have a question. Do you have any idea what age ranges were studied in the clinical?
As far as I remember, it was 18 years and older.
Yeah.
So that's the cutoff that we define adults. And when people are younger than 18 or pregnant, then they have a different type of ethical considerations that usually clinical trials before approving a drug does not allow.
Right.
I can double check it, but I'm fairly confident that was the case.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. I believe it was 18 and older as well. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. Let's see. Someone said, can you be... Oh, Josie said, I think Pfizer was studied in 16 plus. Okay. Thank you, Josie. Thank you. Someone said, can you be reinfected after you have recovered from COVID-19?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And this is the news that's not really fun or no one wants to hear. You might be reinfected after COVID-19. The reason is, like we said, natural immunity doesn't last forever. We've seen reports where it's lasted under 6 to 8 months. Is that a coincidence? Is that not? No. I personally know, 2 people who have got it in the first wave and they got it again in the second wave, and that their episodes were separated by 5 months.
Yeah.
So, and they tested positive in both, and they experienced them both, and they had to quarantine in both. And this is why my suspicion is that this might be, if it goes the way it goes, we might be getting COVID-19 periodically, the vaccine. It might end up being a flu shot kind of situation for some time. But again, that's just my hunch. I'm not a representative or an official by any means.
I completely agree, Sarah. Like I work in the hospital now, and we've seen people being readmitted. Like they're gone, and we'll be like, "Oh my God, he's back again for what?" And it's like COVID again. Like what's
COVID again?
He tested negative at some point. What's going on? And
it's a trap.
Yes. So absolutely. Thank you. Let's take on the next question. Someone said, how do you feel after the COVID vaccine?
So the basic symptoms that people should feel is no more than pain and swelling at the injection site. This is the typical symptoms or the most common ones. And I think, Ariola, you shared your experience with that too, that was your case. Fever, chills, and headaches can happen. But like I said, they should not last more than 24 hours. That's the worst case scenario. And if they do, just go back to the hospital. you should feel normal. This is what they feel. I mean, honestly, I got COVID as a disease, and sometimes I don't feel normal right now. I'm like, when is my breathing going to go back to baseline? So I would be more concerned about that, really. And like, again, I encourage everyone in the States, every country has its own vaccine reporting system. Go to VAERS, which is the vaccine reporting of adverse events. And if you experience something weird or off, just report it. It's a public platform.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. There's another question. Any tips on preventing the spread of misinformation?
Oh my God, that's Josie. You got me, Josie. Let me tell you, as someone who works in public health and is quite active in social media and socializing, it's very hard. And sometimes it's very hard to correct, especially people who believe a lot in conspiracy theories or don't believe that this is a real thing. It's just understand that everyone is dealing with the pandemic at their own pace and based on their own anxiety, and that's okay, because this is how our society is built up and this is how our community is built up. I would just provide them with the resources, hear them out. You don't have to keep correcting people. Again, it's everyone's own anxiety and everyone's own baseline is mandating or controlling the way they're reacting to it. And this is great. That's what makes us different, and hopefully we can impact and provide a change in the future. I mean, this whole podcast hopefully might have corrected some misinformation that people might have, and hopefully people begin or continue to follow the news. Maybe some information we provided today is going to be outdated next week. You never know. So yeah, my tips is just to triple check before you post something in social media, because it gets circulated really fast. I think I made that mistake once when it was like related to COVID-19 deaths or something, and then after I posted it on Instagram, I double checked and it was blown up. It wasn't the actual number. So even though it serves a good purpose, just be very mindful of what you spread and really hear the person in front of you. Not everyone is at your level, or not at your level like intellectually inferior to you or anything of some sort, but not everyone is coming from the same pace or angle, if I would say. I think angle is a better word than level. And just accept that. It's okay.
Thank you. Misinformation, it's very hard.
Yeah.
Like you said, very hard to prevent that. Let's see. Someone said, can we contact the virus through other sensory organs?
I think the question is about how do we contact corona as a virus in general. I think right now we have a lot of good information about how COVID can be transmitted. And it's basically once it gets to you, once you inhale it, we know it's an airborne related disease. And the reason why you see a lot of people covering their eyes is because this is also an open area, right? So it kind of introduces the foreign particles into the inside of your body. So I'm not sure what sensory organs mean, but by all means, even if you touch your hand and you still have the particles there, and then you go and you touch your eyes, like this is why you hear a lot of people on the news say, don't touch your eyes, like be careful of your eyes, because if it's in your hand, then you're not really getting it close to you or close to your eyes, and you're at a better state. But that's my recommendation, is just avoid touching your face and stay as far as possible from the person in front of you. 6 foot is a reasonable one. We talk a lot about air circulation and how it gets to you from the other person next to you. And that's it.
Thank you. Let me go ahead. We have a few. There's a lot of questions, Sarah. I feel like we might not be able to attend to all of this, but you're doing a great job. Someone said, does vitamin C help with immunity?
That's a great question. There's a lot of reports, and let me tell you, we can do a study about vitamin X and COVID, and then maybe we're going to see a pattern, maybe they're not. A lot of the problems with the studies that are related. Okay, let's talk about vitamin C in general. Vitamin C, yes, it does help in immunity in general. It's very good vitamin. It's been tested in like third world countries to help with a lot of autoimmune disorder, with some positive impact and with some not. So that's vitamin C in general and immunity. The short answer is yes. As it relates to our COVID-19 discussion, it's not recommended that I would tell you that the vitamin C is going to prevent you from getting COVID, or it will help you resolve COVID quickly. What I can tell you is that vitamin C is going to help protect and boost your immunity. Is it by this much or by that much? And is this much or that much going to impact your COVID-19 acquisition or transmission? No one knows that. And if someone tells you they know that, they're not telling the truth, because you need thousands of patients and you need to give a couple of them vitamin C and a couple of them nothing, and then see what happens over 9 months. And believe me, no one wants to do the study right now. So even if you see, and a lot of, again, conspiracy theorists or like people who don't really understand the data, or like saying like, look how garlic like protects from COVID, or look, and this is all great. I wish that ginger and garlic can protect it, but you can't give it to a couple of patients or hundreds and then see that there's a difference in percentage and then say it is because of this vitamin. I wish it was like that, but it's really not. Like, you need a different power analysis. And I think that's something you wanted me to talk about a little bit too, Adiola, at some point.
Yes. One moment. We did talk about that. So there's another question. I think that this might be a tricky question.
Okay.
It's from Josie again.
Yeah.
She got all the good questions. She said, I got the vaccine, then tested positive for the virus 3 days later. Should I get the second dose or delay?
So Josie actually asked me that question. I told her I'm going to check and get back to her. And I did ask 2 infectious diseases pharmacists, and they both had conflicting recommendation, because I think the short answer is that no one knows if you should get the other one or no. If I were Josie, I would get it at the same time that is there, because as you can say, when you hit 21 days, Josie, you're going to be already after or past your 14 days of quarantine of the COVID already, because as you guys remember, the doses are 3 weeks apart. So when Josie got it, she's already, when she's due for her second dose, she's already at day 17 almost of having COVID disease. So I would consider her COVID free. So I would just get the COVID, the second COVID shot. There's no need to reset from the beginning. But I think she's a very cool case. Like, she should write herself as a case report and submit it, right?
A very cool case.
Yeah,
she's a very cool case.
Authors, Adiola and Sara.
Yes, and there, whenever you get the vaccine, there's this you get this pamphlet that talks about an app, a messaging that was set up by the government. It's called VSafe. Have you heard about that? This is how the government is following people that have received the vaccine. So
which is an easier way of virus, which I kept telling people about.
Yes, absolutely. So you should probably let them know your case. Right, Josie? Yes. Let me go ahead and someone said, what are the COVID-19 symptoms?
That is a great question. I think it was blown up in social media, but a lot of the people, it depends on how extreme your symptoms are, but I'll just tell you the basics. You lose your smell, you lose your taste, you can have difficulty breathing. It's very common to have fever. It's less likely to have runny nose and sneezing, although it might happen. I personally experienced so much runny nose and sneezing, even though it's less common. Very common to experience some sort of fatigue, as opposed to the typical body aches that you feel when you have a cold. What else am I missing? There's a cough. The cough is usually dry. There's usually a headache. The headache is quite severe. It can resemble a migraine. You may have a sore throat. Again, it's more common in like cold symptoms, but you can definitely get a sore throat. It's less likely that you would experience pain in like your tonsils and your ears, but that is also common. Personally, I had horrible ear pain. I couldn't sleep from my ear pain.
Oh, ear.
So it was very weird. Chills and sweats, like Josie's alluding to. That's kind of just exhausting. Some people experience like just some changes in the GI system. Again, not typical. They peak, as most of people know. You start to notice it from day 3, day 5, and then hopefully it worsens for a little bit, then it gets better, and that's the hope.
I think one of the shortness of breath. I don't know if you experienced that, Sara. Like, we had a doctor. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this is obviously kind of a hallmark symptom. Shortness of breath, the dry cough, the loss of smell.
We had a doctor at our hospital that got it, and he got admitted into the emergency department, and he was literally saying, call my wife, I think I'm gonna die. No, he was ready. He was like, I need to speak to my wife. He thought he was going to die.
Yeah.
It was that bad.
Insane.
But thank God he got better. Thank God we didn't lose him. But yeah, it's like I've never experienced such a thing like this. We're gonna take this one more question. Is the vaccine for everyone, like health related issues? I guess.
So this is a great question, and it kind of it's very similar to the question about should children and pregnant women take it. And the reason why those questions are fairly similar is that the vaccine was studied in a certain group of people that are adults that don't have a lot of baseline disorders that are out the charts and outrageous, that don't have allergies, as we know, from components that are typical in vaccine. So these are the population that the vaccine was studied in. Now, if you come from an outer population, like pregnant women, like children, like transplant patient, then this is your chance to make an educated decision about what's best for you. It might be in your best interest to receive it, given your multiple healthcare comorbidities, rather than risking getting COVID-19 and then risking the virus with your multiple health-related baseline issues. I do recommend that everyone touch base with their personal provider before they make that, especially if they're from certain criteria. Like, for example, if you have extreme anaphylactic reaction to other viral vaccines, if you have multiple transplants, for example, if you have a child, or if you're breastfeeding, think about it for a little bit and compare that to the COVID-19 disorder or infection, and touch base with your healthcare provider, especially if you have an allergy or an intolerance to a previous vaccine.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's see. I think someone asked this question, where is the future of medicine? Would you be able to answer that? Or that's not really our...
No, it's okay. I think it's a good question. I think people just need to keep updating themselves, and they need to keep updating and keep educating themselves about what's going on, and just accept that the future is changing for medicine, and that what the CDC recommends today might be different tomorrow. And that's not because the CDC don't know what they're saying. It's because this virus is new. No one expected this. Like, I worked with the CDC quite a bit. I did not think this is going to happen after St. Patty's Day weekend. It was not fun. So the future is changing. The future is evolving. The future needs follow-up, and the science needs some trust. And you need to just start accepting that it's okay for information to change every day, because this is not history. This is the future, as the question alluded to.
Awesome. Well, there's still so much questions, but I mean, I don't want to take all your time, so I will go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and round this up. So Sarah, you paid it. Sorry, I wanted to tell you. So did you notice people that were engaging during the session?
Yes, so many great people. Thank you. I think all of your followers, and thank you to a lot of my friends that I haven't seen in a long time. A lot of my followers. It's been nice to see people picking in a little bit and disappearing. It was so refreshing, honestly. But I think should I pick two? Is that?
Yes, I was gonna tell you if you could just pick two of the people that you felt like they engaged the most.
Yeah. So I think I'm gonna pick Josie Slow 390 and Nasser Abdul. I think Nasser asked a couple of questions and kept engaging throughout the discussion. Same with Josie. Like, yeah, I appreciate your comment about the 16 years and older as well. I think that was very engaging, and you're giving yourself as an example. About COVID-19 acquisition after a dose of vaccine was very informative. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much, guys. If you did win, go ahead and message me. And Sarah, we just want to say thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here today. A lot of people said so many wonderful things about you. Someone said earlier, I've learned so much from this session that I've known about COVID-19 the whole time. I saw that early, and I thought that was extremely beautiful. So it's really nice to be able to, have a platform, and it's really nice to have you as a guest on here as well. Thank you so much, and do have a wonderful day. Thank you guys for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You're so welcome. Bye.
Bye.